Okay, excellent. All right, so let's see where we're at on this. Start with the Soul of the Indian. So I grabbed just there was 3 chapters assigned. I just grabbed a couple of chapters for us to discuss. Does anybody have something they want to contribute from the first chapter?
I wrote in my notes, worship was silent, solitary, and without priest because individuals had a direct relationship with their three mysteries. Nature was served as a temple or a place of worship.
Okay, so that's addressing which one of these questions, Ruby?
The first one.
First one. How does Charles Eastman, he's the author of The Soul of the Indian, description of the silent, solitary worship in nature challenge the necessity of organized religious institutions and clergy? So without reading it, thank you for contributing what you read in your notes, but yeah, it kind of just explained, just based on your notes and your own words, what's going on there.
He said to not focus on material things, like some of the Christians did.
Yeah, so you're seeing this conflict. He is Christian. He converted willingly, an indigenous person. So he's like a lot of indigenous people at this time. This is in the late 1800s, early 20th century. They have feet in both worlds, the white world and the red man world, right? And so, yeah, his observations is that here you have a lot of Christians who saying, Indians, be Christian. Okay. Reading the book, hey, actually read the Gospels. There's some things you can argue with there, but on the large, like, why would you argue about it just on the face value of what's written there? I'm not talking about the doctrine of the religious belief. So some people will get their heels up when I'm not religious, I don't want to read this. But if you just read it as just a piece of literature, parables, poetry, it's a way of having an internal dialogue with yourself to go, this is how you be a decent person, how to address people as brothers and sisters. So we've seen the hypocrisy of Christians. I mean, that's writ large the history of American society taking land from the indigenous people. That's a profound hypocrisy. That's not what Jesus, I don't think it's in the Gospels that if you see land that is vulnerable, people have it, go forth, children of God, and take it with absolute brutality. I don't think Jesus said any of that. He's pointing out the hypocrisy of that. Why is it necessary for Charles Eastman, when he reflects on his formative years as an indigenous person experiencing his native religion, why do you think it's important to have silent, solitary worship in nature? Has anyone experienced being in nature by yourself and in silence? Peaceful? Yeah. It can be. Sometimes it's not. So even if it's not peaceful, there's danger.
Well, I think I'm not sure if it's in that part, but it said something that it gave him the he can notice what's really important, right? Like what are the things that really matter in life and not focus so much on the other things.
Yeah, so how does that come? So if you're sitting by yourself in the middle of the woods, getting your God on, what are you noticing? What do you see? Nature. So what do you see in nature? Okay. Life. And what does that look like? Be specific.
Like the moving trees because of the wind, water flowing,
Water flowing, birds.
insects.
And what are the birds and insects doing as they're going around the plants? You don't have to go out to a refuge. You can sit out in your own backyard and see this.
We're all sitting there and we were, doing things like we should do.
Yeah, what things are they doing? So let's say you're in your backyard and you have a bush with a bunch of flowers all over it. What are the bugs and the birds doing with those bushes? Yeah, they're
Zooming and
getting the nectar out. Hummingbirds, bumblebees. Why are they doing that?
that's their way of.
That's their way of living, right? That's food. What does the plant get out of that?
This kind of
Would it be like the creation of not life in a way, because when we're pollinating.
Yeah, it's for pollination, right? The hummingbird goes in there, you get something sweet, and now the pollen is on his nose, and he goes to another flower, and it sparks new buds, seeds. Seeds drop, new life. The plant is propagating. The bird is eating. It's connected.
they all work in like years.
Yeah, it's symbiotic. Flowers aren't just beautiful because God said, let there be beauty. There's something practical behind that. They're trying to attract, like just like an advertising billboard. I'm over here. Beautiful. Yellow, red. Bird sees that. And they're not recognizing beauty, they're seeing a restaurant. I'm gonna go in there and eat. It's symbiotic. You get to eat, we get to pass down our genetic information to the next generation. You hear the wind, right? The wind is also part of that. You watch the river, it flows. What does water give us?
Wouldn't everything be true, like,
Yeah,
it's a cycle.
it's all connected. And why is it important? Because you see people go camping, right? And they bring their I'm going out to nature to get away from the hustle and bustle. We're gonna get a tent. And I'm gonna bring my generator and my Bluetooth speaker. And then now they're just outside surrounded by noise. What do you get, whether you're in nature being silent or in your room being silent? For 5 minutes, 10 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, just sitting there in silence. What can happen there?
You get a sense of,
What's that?
like you might get a sense of clarity.
You get a sense of clarity. What does that mean? What kind of clarity? What is clarifying for you?
Like your thoughts, like you straight into God, you hear your mind.
Yeah, so your thoughts, you're clearing your mind. So thoughts are happening. Are you aware of all of your thoughts when you're going to school, rushing to get to class?
No,
So in silence, you're just sitting there and paying attention. It's an opportunity to become aware of your thoughts. The good, the bad, the ugly. And just have this objective observer consciousness. Whatever the thoughts are, I'm hungry. Grandma said this. I'm not strong enough. I need to do my homework. Next week I have to, whatever. Last year I should have. I wish I was better. I love my girlfriend. Just thoughts. It's an opportunity to really sit down with yourself and to observe that, oh, these thoughts are random. They're coming at me like a torrent, like a storm. I have no control. So what am I describing here? Sitting down alone with your thoughts.
System.
And what is that process? What word do we usually use with that word? Sitting down. I'm not going to say anything. I'm going to be committed to sitting here and not get up. I'll have a little timer here. That's meditation. That's what he's doing. And meditation can look, there's all sorts of ways of meditating. You do it with deeds, you do it with breath, you do it with prayer. So like prayer, like the rosary, you just got to say the rosary. That trains your mind to just have one constant string of sound going on, right? Whatever the mantra is. And a lot of people who try meditation, you hear this, let me ask you this. Is there such thing as being a good meditator or a bad meditator? Yeah. If you sit down to meditate, whatever the medium of meditation is, and you go, man, I can't clear my thoughts. I'm a bad meditator. I don't want to do this anymore. That's not part of the equation. Actually, the point is to realize you have no control of your thoughts. The good thoughts, the constructive thoughts, the destructive thoughts, they're just coming at you. Where are they coming from? Yeah, where are they coming from?
Your brain.
Yeah, they're in your head, but where are they coming? How is your brain generating those thoughts? And that's part of your mind. Where's your mind getting those thoughts from?
From like past stuff
Past stuff you've done.
things you're like maybe thinking about in the future.
Yeah, and where's all that motivating from? Past stuff that you've done, the stuff that you're thinking about in the future. Where's that coming from?
Being worried.
Where's that coming from? What's motivating all of that? On my worries, my hopes, my dreams, my regrets, my accomplishments. Where is that coming from? Where are those inputs coming from? Your surroundings. Exactly.
Your environment.
The society in which you live in. So if you sit down with yourself and say, I'm going to sit here for 10 minutes, and this is why most people don't meditate. And understand this is something that human beings did, not just Indians, Christians, Jews, Muslims, Buddhists, pagans. This was normal activity up until very recently, probably coinciding with the Industrial Revolution. Because when you sit down with your thoughts, you're reflecting on your surroundings. And what are your surroundings saying? Be better. Your surroundings are advertisements, are what society says you should do. Get a job, make more money, buy this, get this truck, get this shirt, this jacket. You're not making enough money. You're not doing enough. What's wrong with you? When you sit down with yourself, going, I'm not doing enough. What's wrong with me? There's something wrong with me. 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 I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. I'm not good enough. Think about advertisement. That's all advertisers are trying to say to you. You're not good enough unless you buy this toothpaste, unless you drink this beer, unless you buy these panties, unless you get on DraftKings. You're not good enough. So I suspect why Charles Eastman is saying it's important to sit in nature is it offers you a different approach, a different surrounding of going, oh, all of this noise that is around me. Yes, all of stuff's important. You have to navigate this civilization. It's a good thing you are in college, perhaps. Maybe it's not, but perhaps it is. But if you don't take a moment to sit down and get a broader picture and maybe even incorporate what we're studying in class. How many generations has the Industrial Revolution been around? Buildings, planes, automobiles, paved roads with asphalt on them, banks. I mean, how long has that been around?
Like 5 years.
Yeah, that's it. The course of all of civilization, all of the stuff that we think is normal, has been a blink of the eye in the course of time. So sitting in nature, I think Charles Eastman is saying that, I mean, he had his worries. He was a man in Dakota. There was probably a lot of pressure on him to be a good warrior. And that's just part of his cultural inputs. I'm sure that gave him some anxiety. He was taught at an early age, the best thing you can do is to die in battle. That was value to them. But I'm sure, and that's all important. That's not discounting it, but I'm sure sitting in nature is like, yes, that stuff is important, but look around me. There are birds, bees, there's wind, there's the river, sounds, there's the sky. Have you ever looked up at a starry sky and really understood that that goes on forever? This is what he's gaining. This is what he's gaining perspective on when he does that. Anything else from these discussion questions? Charles Eastman distinguishing between the spiritual mind and the physical mind. Why does he view the pursuit of material progress and wealth as a source of needless peril to the soul?
I think the difference between spiritual and mostly focus on self-discipline and truth, and also like moving like the divine through prayer, fasting, or self-reflection, which in contrast with the physical mind that it's like mainly like with like really desires of wealth and power.
Yeah.
And then when he talks about like the needless he believes it encourages like pride, greed, and selfishness, which can weaken like the spiritual mind that one can like grow.
Yeah, excellent. I think you're right on. Let's see. Okay. The red man divided mind into two parts. And this is kind of what I think I was referring to. And again, I'm a student of his as well, just as much of you are as him. I'm trying to figure this stuff out as well. I think this is a very interesting approach to navigating life. The red man divided mind into two parts, the spiritual mind and the physical mind. The first, the spiritual mind, is the pure spirit. So what would we call that? If you're a Christian, what would you call that? Or the soul, right? Your soul, which is a part of the fabric of God. It's that part of you that is beyond your ego. Beyond you being a man, beyond you being successful, beyond you being a woman, beyond you having children, beyond you being an American, beyond you being Mexican, whatever. Those are just words. The first is the pure spirit, concerned only with the essence of things, life. And it was this he sought to strengthen by spiritual prayer, during which the body is subdued by fasting and hardship. Why do you think that's important he's Dakota, why do you think it's important for him to fast? Hardship. Fasting is hardship. Yeah, has anyone ever fasted? Yeah? How long?
2 days.
Yeah, what do you notice when you
get
fast?
really hungry.
You get really hungry.
You have to be like strong to like.
So you're really hungry and you were with your boys and they're all eating cheeseburgers, pizza, tacos, and you're committed to this fast. What does it mean to you that you have the discipline to say, no, thanks?
It's something like very strong.
Yeah, you're developing a kind of a character. I'm strong.
Like rewarding.
Yeah, why is it rewarding? There's food in front of you. You're hungry. It looks good. I want to eat it.
Because you have self-control.
Yeah, okay, yeah, you have you're demonstrating you have self-control, but that self-control is strengthened by when you see food that you want, whether you're fasting or not, and you desire it, what is that desire made of? You're having a desire, I want the cheeseburger. Choosing not to eat it. What is that? Where is that desire emanating from? Where is it emanating from? You're looking at it, you're smelling it. I'm gonna eat it. I'm desiring. Whether you eat it or not. That's temptation. Temptation, desire. Where is that emanating from? Your consciousness, your thoughts. I have a thought. And so if you're fasting, you're having two thoughts. I want to eat that burger, but I made a commitment to myself to fast for 2 days. So it's an opportunity. Fasting is a form of meditation. Because you're going to have those thoughts. You're going to be with people who are going to be like, dude, here's some tacos. And you're going to be like, I want those tacos, but I also have committed. That's a thought. And it's just a way of saying that I have these thoughts, and not all of these thoughts I should act on. Because if you think about the trouble we get ourselves into, whether it's drinking or having, I don't know, sexual relations with people we shouldn't be having, spending money, that all comes from thoughts. And then a year goes by and you look at your life and you go, how did this happen, man? I have a drinking problem. I'm broke. I'm with somebody that I really don't want to be with, and I don't know how to get out of this anymore. Well, if you trace back day by day, it was a collection of thoughts that got you into that situation. And if you don't have a practice, whether it's meditation or fasting, this is how people get in trouble. Because they don't have a practice of going, I want the cheeseburger. But I made a commitment to myself not to eat the cheeseburgers, not to eat anything. And I'm conscious of these thoughts. And it's also a way of understanding how, in a world where you have very little control of what happens to you and how it happens, you don't have control of gas prices. You don't have control of who's president unless collectively a bunch of people vote differently. You don't have control over what wars are happening or how people treat you. But these practices that he's talking about is a way of saying, it's got a little bit of control, man. Little bit of control. So empower yourself with that tiny, itty bitty bitty control, which is at the edge of memory, right here, right now. At the edge of memory, you can't remember it because it's happening now. That's where thoughts happen. I want the cheeseburger. That's happening now. And you have the power to go, oh, screw this fast, man. I'm going to eat and have that burger. Or no, I made a commitment. That's a thought happening now. You eat the burger. Okay, now it's a memory. And now regret. Now I'm not a good person. Well, that's a thought too. Oh, you could beat yourself up and go, I'm not a good person because I can't hold my commitments, or going, screwed up again. I'm at the edge of memory. Reset, try again. It's empowerment. During which the body is subdued by fat. In this type of prayer, there was no beseeching of favor or help. That's very interesting. What do you think he means by that? So he's in prayer.
There's no asking for favor.
Which there's nothing wrong with that, right? Someone you love dearly gets cancer. That's very common for people of faith. Dear Lord, hear my prayers, heal my mother. But what he's offering is there's a different type of prayer. So he's in nature, doing whatever he's doing. one of the things that happens in nature, if you allow yourself, you open up to it, is a sense of awe. Humility. Look at me. Just, I'm this living creature made up of chemicals, atoms, cells, organs, blood, pus. I'm gonna die. It doesn't end well. It's a humbling, and there's all of this stuff happening around me. There's an infinite sky above me. There's all sorts of creatures around me that are just trying to survive, that are all interconnected with each other. Nature is, by its very essence, symbiotic. We eat food from plants and animals. We're literally taking their essence in or sustain ourselves. It's a dynamic that flows in and without, with the realization that there is no in and out. That I'm not this separate thing apart from everything that's going around me. I'm absorbed in the entirety of the part that from my senses looks like there's these divisibles. There's me, there's you, there's tables, there's chairs. But in prayer, discipline, what he's offering here is an opportunity to understand that no, this is all interconnected. It is a totality. It's all happening. It's unfolding. It's moving. Very interesting what Charles Eastman is teaching here from a little over 100 years ago. All matters of personal or selfish concern as success in hunting or warfare. So here he is thinking about things that give him anxiety. Am I a good warrior? And maybe I am, maybe I'm not. But when I sit with myself in nature, I realize that in the grand scheme of things, that doesn't really matter. I'm going to die, and 100 years from now, nobody's going to remember me. So, again, it's not to discount those things that are important to us, getting a good job, having a career, being a good family member. But it's to keep it in check, man. To say, don't get your ego too involved in these things. Because again, in the end, it doesn't really matter. Relief from sickness or sparing of a beloved life. We are definitely relegated to the plane of the lower of the or material mind, and all ceremonies, charms, inclinations designed to secure a benefit to avert danger were recognized as emanating from the physical self. Such a beautiful line right there. It's this understanding that, yes, I have this subjective experience and it's connected with everything. And so to the degree that I get caught up in my little personal worries is only wasted energy. I wake up, I do my best. The results that come, I have no control over. We'll see what happens. Anything else? How about this question right here? This is an interesting question. Charles Eastman concludes that Christianity and modern civilization are opposed and irreconcilable. What? That's a weird statement, man. Christianity and modern civilization are opposed and irreconcilable. They are in fierce conflict with each other. That's a weird statement because you hear that term, Christian civilization. You hear some people today, we are a Christian nation. So right now, if my son goes to Nicky Road, the 10 Commandments are up. Now they're going to start teaching from the Bible, teaching theology in history classes, in English classes. That's an expression of the Christian civilization. He's saying that to be a Christian, and he has converted to Christianity, this is deeply important to him. You are putting, if you really are committed to this thing called Christianity, you are stepping outside of the trappings of civilization. They are not reconcilable. What do you think he means by that? That's really controversial.
Because it's like what it says there, like the critic of the white settlers' actions and treaties. Like
Where are you reading at?
right there in blue, based on his critique of white settlers.
Up here?
Yeah, in the same question.
Okay. Sorry. Based on his critique of the white settlers' actions and treaties, what evidence does he provide to support this perspective? Yeah.
So like the actions that like the things that are going on are opposed to what the religion is.
Let's see what, yeah. Let's start here. It is a simple truth that the Indian did not, so long as his native philosophy held sway over his mind, either envy or desire to imitate the splendid achievements of the white man. So that's an interesting claim. Let's continue. In his own thought, he rose superior to them. He's building an interesting line of thinking here. He scorned them. So this is the perspective of the Indian looking at the white man at first contact. That's interesting because the white people are looking at the Indians going, you guys are inferior. The Indians are looking at the white people going, you guys are inferior. Even as a lofty spirit absorbed in his stern task rejects the soft beds, the luxurious food. So even as a lofty spirit absorbed. So he's talking about there comes a time where lofty spirit. So it's one thing to have, okay, these spiritual thoughts, lofty, there's these things up in the clouds thinking that are important, spiritually important. So yeah, there does come a time when the Native American is going to absorb, think white man's world. Soft beds, luxurious food, the pleasure worshiping dalliance of a rich neighbor. It was clear to him that virtue and happiness are independent of these things. It is not compatible with them. So this is why they feel superior. White man is saying, hey, you guys are like friends of the Indian. Friends of the Indian, kill the man, save the Indian. They don't mean literally kill the Indian, they mean kill their culture because it's inferior. Don't you guys want to live in soft beds? Why do you want to keep sleeping on the ground? Don't you want food at the ready? Why do you want to hunt for it? Don't you want to wear clothes that you don't have to toil to make all the time? Just go to the store and buy clothes. They did all that stuff themselves. So the Indian is looking at the white guy going, no thanks. And this is what Sitting Bull was all about. It was like, I want to preserve our old ways because we're independent, man. We understand the world is symbiotic. That when we take down a buffalo, we're not taking down the buffalo so I can put a buffalo head above my bed and go, what a great hunter I am. That's going to feed my tribe, man. And we've made clothes out of that. Symbiotic. The buffalo gifts us that, and they would pray to the animal that they would kill. Thank you. Give gratitude. Continues the cycle of life. There was undoubtedly much in primitive Christianity. This is interesting. This is where I think we're getting at right here. There was undoubtedly much in primitive Christianity to appeal to this man and Jesus. Hard sayings to the rich and about the rich would have been entirely comprehensible to him. So he's going back to the first century, early Christianity, the appeal of this Jewish rabbi who was executed by the Romans. And yeah, what did this historical figure, if he actually existed, there's sometimes controversy on that, although we have the gospel themselves is historical evidence that there's independent people saying this guy existed, whether he was walking on water, all that, that's where religious belief comes in. So if we just look at him as just a teacher, what was he saying about the rich? There's a great phrase in the Gospels. In that narrative of Jesus, it's very interesting because I can't imagine, because does anyone know anything about the narrative of the Gospels, about the tension between him and the Pharisees? What is he always doing what does he say to the Pharisees always? The word he uses to the Pharisees. Pharisees are, if you don't know who these are, they're basically the religious order that makes sure that the Judea law is being followed and that the covenant is maintained between the Jews, people, tribes, and God. Jesus, he's this young guy going around to these people who are learned, who have status in society, that rank and file Jews look up to. And he says, woe to you. So the Pharisees are looking at him going, what's this guy talking about, man? Woe to us. Now, they can't just kill him because they have to follow the laws themselves, but they can trip him up and make him say things that would warrant capital punishment. So he says, if there was one guy that came up to him and says, hey, I'm doing all the laws, man. I'm checking all the boxes. I'm a good person. I'm generous. I feed the poor. Am I worthy of the Father? And this guy's rich, saying this to this Jewish rabbi, Jesus. What does Jesus say to him about rich people? And I'm bringing this up because, this is what he's alluding to from the text.
Is it that it's like unspiritual?
Well, his specific words, he looks at this rich man and then he makes a claim about all wealthy people and he says, oh, you're worried about going to heaven. And he talked in parables, right? He didn't say straightforward, well, you do A, you do C, and then you get to go to heaven. He talked in parables. He said to him, it's easier for a camel to go through the eye of a needle than for a rich man to go to heaven. Is it possible for a camel to go through the eye of a needle? No, well, obviously not, right? So what he's saying, absolutely, it's impossible if you're wealthy. Impossible. You're damned to hell. And to them, hell is not fire and brimstone, it's just non-existence. You will cease to exist because of your wealth. Give your wealth away. Look around you. There are hungry people. What are you doing for it? That's incredibly radical. It's radical today. So there was undoubtedly much in primitive Christianity to appeal to this man. So people heard that, and obviously this religion grew. Here is a Native American who for the first 16 years of his life was not involved in this religion, and probably for most of that time never even heard of it, and now is a Christian himself. There's an appeal to this. Yet the religion that is preached in our churches and practiced by our congregations with its element of display and self-aggrandizement, is actively proselytism and is open contempt to all religions but its own. Was for a long time extremely repellent. So there's a couple of things he's saying there. You got these Christian missionaries going into indigenous land and saying, you got the wrong religion. We got the right religion. Here's your avenue to heaven. Go to our church, and then you get to see priests and all this regalia, gold pews perhaps, gold candles. He's looking around going, wait a minute. You guys are, I keep hearing this word, Jesus. And one, he told me I was wrong for the way I believe. And now I'm in this room, this church, and there's opulence all around us. Hypocrisy, man. You guys, it seems like this is just a word. Now, why is it impossible for a rich man to go to heaven, according to this guy right here? Yeah, but why having, whether you're born into wealth, is that what you said, born into wealth? Oh, I'm sorry, I misheard you. Yeah, what happens when you hoard wealth? Yeah, so what happens though, when you're being greedy and you hoard wealth?
For you, like maybe a donation that could have helped.
Yeah,
feed
somebody else
everybody.
could. You've got all this food, enough food for you to eat, and your neighbor's over there
Starving.
starving. Sucks to be you. Should work harder. That's one element of it. But the guy that Jesus was talking to, that he's sort of referring to here, that's where that reference comes from. Very famous passage in the Bible. It's easier to go to, for a camel to go I-3 Neil than trying to go to heaven. That rich guy was generous. He was checking all the boxes, man. And here's this rabbi teacher saying, I don't care. Cool, you gave everything away, you still ain't going to heaven, you're rich. And that guy walked away exasperated, and he just walked away. He's like, well, I'm not following that guy. He ain't telling me what I want to hear. He's telling me to give everything away. What happens when you have money? You suppose.
Your moral compass like gets like you like you're only following, like you're compromising your moral compass.
Yeah. How does that happen? But absolutely.
It's like, well, like maybe right now, not compared to like maybe the old, like back then, but right now maybe like let's say you're a chocolate company where you buying your cocoa, like well farms, like are they like, have they been inspected to make sure there's no child labor, they're receiving proper, like they're paid properly, there's nothing like that, like is that even that morally?
Yeah.
It's not even enough.
Yeah, there's all sorts of implications from our purchases. But let's suppose you're a very careful consumer. You make sure you buy your things that aren't exploiting people to an unnecessary degree. There's always exploitation involved in anything we consume. You're generous to people. It's part of what he's getting at here is the more money you get, and you see this all the time. You see this in media. You see somebody that you might have even followed rise to success, whether it was a musician, a comedian, someone in business, and you're kind of following in a parasocial relationship. And then 10 years down the road, they're divorced, they've got a drug problem, they commit suicide. Right? For a while, like back in the 60s, the rock and roll icons, people like Jimi Hendrix, Jim Morrison, Janis Joplin, a generation later, Kurt Cobain from Nirvana. Those people all died from either direct suicide or suicide through drug and alcohol abuse. They had everything they wanted, success, money.
But it wasn't.
Yeah, it wasn't enough because, you guys all know who Kurt Cobain is from Nirvana? Heard his songs probably before, even if you're not a fan. He wrote in a diary, and basically before he committed suicide, he started out incredibly poor, and then rose to worldwide fame, had a lot of money, and he wrote explicitly, "I was still left with myself, and I hated myself." And then he put a shotgun in his mouth and blew his head off. So he was literally in hell during his whole existence. And money didn't help that. It only actually aggravated the hell that he was in originally, because now he's worried. I've never been independently wealthy, but I imagine it's pretty isolating, because how do you know who your friends are now?
You don't.
You don't. Everybody wants something that you have. They want access to your fame, access to the good time you're having. They're not going to tell you what's really on their mind anymore. It becomes very easy to surround yourself with people that tell you yes all the time. If you're not independently wealthy, whether you're really struggling economically or even just middle class, like me, for instance, because I love my wife, practically speaking, I have to listen to her. Because if she leaves, now, if she divorces me, then I would have to pay alimony and child support, have to live in an apartment. So even those days where I don't love her, we're not getting along, it's like, figure this out, man, because she leaves me, life is going to be really difficult. So see her, understand why she's having a problem with you. If I had money, it's like, okay, you're telling me what to do, you're telling me there's something wrong with me, telling me I have to change, why don't you just go away? Or some really good friend, lifelong friend is saying, hey, the way you're treating your wife, that ain't cool. I don't need you. I got money, man. I'm just going to surround myself with people who affirm what I'm doing all the time. That's hell. Because eventually it's going to come back and destroy you. It happens all the time. It happens all the time. Rich people all the time lament about how horrible it is to be rich, which is really weird if you're not rich. You're like, dude, what are you talking about? Poor rich person. I wish I had your problems. And what they're trying to warn people is, no. And this is what he's saying here. It's like this, and this is, I think, where he's going. There was undoubtedly much in primitive Christianity to appeal to this man, right? A lot of the people that followed Jesus' teaching were poor people. And instead of going, I want to be rich too, they went, oh, it's enough to be with myself, my brothers and sisters, and to take care of each other. I mean, those people sold, the people who had wealth, they sold in the early church, they sold everything. They built churches and communities, and they took care of each other, brothers and sisters. And as the church progressed, they kind of lost that. And that's what he's talking about here. And that's what he's faced with. The momentum of history has happened, and now, yeah, I read the Gospels. That sounds interesting, but I find it weird. This is what he's saying, that I'm surrounded by all this hypocrisy centered on this guy's teachings. Very odd. So yeah, he goes on. I'd like to go on in the next chapter, but yeah, this is where it is my personal belief after 35 years experience of it with Christianity, that there is no such thing as Christian civilization. I believe that Christianity and modern civilization are opposed and irreconcilable, and that the spirit of Christianity and our ancient religion, Indian religion, is essentially the same. We just use different metaphors and poetry. We called it the Great Mystery. You called it God or Jesus. We're talking about the same thing. We're talking about put yourself in a space where you can humble yourself and understand that despite what culture, society, whether it's to be a good warrior or to get a good job here in modern America, that in the grand scheme of things, none of that matters. What actually matters is how you treat your brothers and sisters. That's what matters. So going on to the next one, anyone have a response to? According to Charles Eastman, the family unit serves as the primary social government structure. That's interesting. How does he justify the clan system as a model for allied people, and how does he contrast this with the critiques of Western civilization? Maybe we can come back to this. Anyone have a response to this one? This is, I find, very interesting. Charles Eastman argues that the position of woman is the test of civilization. How does his analysis of the Indian woman's rights and responsibilities in the family counter the common perception of Native women held by the white conquerors? Anyone get this chapter and see what he had to say about women? This is really fascinating because it's very contrast to even how we, as much progress as we've had, right? Women can vote, women can get in the professional trades, the Me Too movement. I mean, we just saw, if you're following politics, we just saw a guy that was about to run for, was running for the Senate in the state of Maine. It looked like he was going to win, but credible allegations of rape happened, and his campaign's over. He was incredibly popular, referred to a guy named Graham Plattner. What I find interesting about that is not even 10, 15 years ago, maybe even less, that probably wouldn't have derailed this campaign. So there's progress. Women, as difficult as it is when sexual abuse happens, and it's incredibly difficult because the inclination is not to believe. And then even if you do have belief, you have to go through the whole criminal justice system. A lot of women just, it's like, I'll move on. It was a horrible experience, but I don't want to have to face him in a court and have to explain to God and everybody what happened. That guy's a piece of shit. That's good enough for me to know that. But yet, this guy goes off free. He's probably doing it to other women. So that's why this woman spoke out, because she was very afraid to do it. But she said this guy is probably a serial rapist. So I bring that all up because, yes, there's been progress, but I think what he's about to say here, if you didn't get into this, man, this is a whole different ball of wax about how men and women related to each other. The Indian was a religious man from his mother's womb. From the moment of her recognition of the fact of conception to the end of the second year of life of the baby, which was the ordinary duration of lactation, it was supposed by us that the mother's spiritual influence counted for most. That's very different than how Western civilization has approached women. He's saying the very foundation of our spiritual beliefs, of what really matters, derives from women. How do you think that's going to reflect on how women are treated within that society? In a very positive way. Now, they still have an idea of providing and protecting women, but it's not from a patriarchal perspective. It's just from because a tribe is a family. So we're all contributing to this family. And in addition to everybody getting the food, making the clothes, maintaining the teepees, helping from migration to one migration, everybody's doing that. And now women have the added burden of becoming pregnant for 9 months, holding that pregnancy and having a baby and raising that baby. So of course, and that baby represents the next generation, our life, continuation of our tribe, of our family. Think about how women have babies in our society and how they're viewed. Anyone have any experience with this? If there's any mothers here, did you feel honored, seen, respected entirely? By not just your family, but society writ large? I mean, women have babies here and they're expected to go back to their wage earning job and put their kid in daycare. You go to the hospital and let's read how women had babies back then. It's very interesting. Her attitude and secret meditations must be such as to instill into the receptive soul of the unborn. Her attitude and secret meditations must be such as to instill into the receptive soul of the unborn. That's really interesting. So if that's what that's saying is the mother's state holding the pregnancy, her attitude, her secret meditations are instilling that into the receptive soul. So contrasting it today, women having babies today, especially if you're struggling economically, if the fact that you're worrying about paying bills, perhaps you're discovering that since your body's changing and all the challenges that come with pregnancy, the person you're having this baby with isn't too sensitive to it, doesn't understand, isn't willing to understand. This is hard. It seems built into their culture. I think he's unfolding that was understood. But this is difficult. We're not going to give her any added burdens. She's taken care of. She's doing the greatest thing any human being can do, give life to our tribe. The unborn child, the love of the great mystery, and a sense of brotherhood with all creation. This recognition that everything is connected. This is important to them. It's built into the fabric of their culture. Silence and isolation are the rule of life for the expected mother. Again, silence and isolation. She wanders prayerful in stillness of great woods. So she spends a lot of time with herself, wandering the woods, in nature again. Or on the bosom of an untrodden prairie, and in her poetic mind, the imminent birth of her child prefigures the advent of a master man, a hero, or mother of heroes, a thought conceived in the virgin breast of primeval nature, this connection. The woman is pregnant, she's a reflection of nature itself, and dreamed out in a hush that is only broken by the sighing of the pine trees and the thrilling orchestra of a distant waterfall. That's poetic, man. And when the day of days in her life dawns, the day in which there is to be new life, the miracle of those making has been entrusted to her. She seeks no human aid. She's going to have a baby by herself. Have you ever heard of that before? This is an entirely different culture than we are accustomed to even thinking about. She has been trained and prepared in her body and mind, for this is her holiest duty ever since she can remember. The ordeal is best met alone, where no curious or pitying eyes embarrass her, where all of nature says to her spirit, "'Tis is love, 'tis is love, the fulfilling of life." That's really interesting. And I'm a little bit privy to why this right here, why she's alone doing this. It's not that having a baby is shameful. So I think I've shared with you, my wife was a doula. Now, she never tried to train anyone to have a baby by themselves. That's radical. Actually, I know people who do that, but I've heard of people doing that. I wouldn't recommend that. Why not at least have a midwife somewhere? Because things can go wrong. But probably things don't go, I mean, things probably went wrong for women back then, like meaning their life might be in danger, but they're active. They eat real food. They're outside, they're getting sunlight. So they're healthy creatures. And so they're strong, they're fit, they eat well. And so I imagine their labors, their deliveries were much more safer than even in the best of conditions today than we have today. So this is why this is possible. But I bring this up. Yeah, my wife was a doula, so what she would do is a lot of what she would do is work on it whenever she met her client, the expected mother, is a birth plan. You want to have this in a hospital. You want to have it at home, or you have this with a midwife. Who's going to be invited to your birth? We need to write all of that down. You got to make a plan. It's a big deal. And my wife she would emphasize that. It really matters who you invite to the birth. So if anybody, so let's say you are having a birth at home with a midwife, and your mother is invited, but she doesn't have a background in this. She doesn't know what this is all about. And to her, you need to be in a hospital with a doctor. You don't want someone like that at your birth, because that anxiety that your mother is going to have, your expect mother having a baby, you're going to take in that anxiety, you're going to tighten up, and that's the recipe for a really difficult birth. You got to be relaxed as much as possible, right? At least that's what I've been told. I don't know. I'm your prospect of having a baby. I'll humble myself. I don't know. Presently, she returns to the camp carrying the mysterious, the holy, the dearest bundle. She feels the enduring warmth of it and hears its soft breathing. It is still part of herself, since both are nourished by the same mouthful. And no look of a lover could be sweeter than its deep, trusting gaze. That I can relate to. First time you hold your baby. And I can't imagine what it's like for a mother who literally had that being in her body, who shares those cells and that experience. Must be exponentially more enriching to gaze into your infant's eyes. So, but even for a father, it's a pretty humbling experience. Yeah. This is history. History isn't just learning about Theodore Roosevelt and the Civil War and World War II. And that's all history too, but this is history. This is how people live. Very differently than anybody connected to, unless you have, I make some assumptions here, but some of us might have indigenous roots here in this classroom. Does anyone have indigenous roots that you know of and you're connected to here? Well, regardless, this is how these people live. Where women weren't just honored, that can be kind of patronizing. I honor you. I cherish you. You don't listen to me. Behavior is a language that can actually communicate honoring rather than saying it. I mean, you could be with someone your whole life and never say, I love you. Those words are meaningless unless there's action behind it. What we're seeing here is a society that is not predicated on money, on accumulation of wealth. We're seeing a society here predicated on love. That's revolutionary. And deeply needed to contemplate today. There are things to be concerned about, and when I think about it, this looks like a world void of love. So this is what motivated Charles Eastman. He was looking around the world. He's a doctor. He was at Wounded Knee when the Lakota and Cheyenne were gunned down by the 7th Cavalry, and gave aid to those wounded and dying. So what is motivating him to write is that, hey, I come from a culture of love, real love, not just I love you, baby, of real love, where people sacrificed what they wanted for the tribe. And so he writes in the foreword, hey, yes, the red man has a lot to learn from the white man, but the white man can also learn from the red man. So distilling what I think he's saying here is take a page from the past, man. Take a page from these people that were conquered, brutalized, humiliated. And if we're looking around going, is this really working today? Maybe we have something to learn here of what actual love is. Did anybody get into Mother Jones? Okay. Why don't we take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back and touch on a little bit of Mother Jones.
What are these?
Por eso la tiene esta vez. Porque los países son los otros. Sí,
Hey, how'd you do? Okay, let's confirm that just to make sure your understanding of it. We're in 1302, correct? Complete, excellent. Okay. So yeah, going forward, you got now bundle 2. So I don't know what you got going on today, but try 10, 15 minutes. If you got a lot of time, do that, but build up some momentum so you're not under the gun come Monday. It's just like I'm doing a little bit today, a little bit tomorrow, and that can add up. Because if you look, take advantage of this. You look, and this can help you go, okay, I can do a little bit each day. You open up the bundle, and it says 4 hours right here. So just go, okay, cool. I'll chip away at that 4 hours starting today, a little bit at a time. Cool, well, excellent. Good job, man.
O sea, just lo de la vida. Y ahorita es más cívica. El más fuerte que tuvieron la pero pues porque ellos salen en este soldaditos. Sí, sí. Pero pues Dios hace eso. Pero
El de la camioneta. Sí, el de la camioneta. Vamos a tener que bajar para acá, sí. Sí. Sí, ¿y cuánto dura mañana? Así menos una hora o dos. O una hora después. Pues yo diría, ok. Yo tengo miedo de decidirlos. Desde eso creo que todo partido hasta las 5. No, así, vemos cómo vamos en una hora y nos quedamos un ratito más sí, a la hora. O si quieres empezamos, o es mucho, como mañana a juntar ideas o hacer un hacer y organizar un poquito o hoy para las ideas. Sí, ¿verdad? Ok. Para tener más. Sí, hoy lo que pasa es que ok. Entonces el lunes quedamos el examen, sí, y yo creo que de ahí estamos haciendo sí, no es lo mismo, es más con una idea.
All right, let's get back into it. Yeah, how about the first question? How does Mother Jones's observation of the wealth gap in Chicago, specifically the contrast between her wealthy clients and the suffering workers she observed, shape her perspective on the responsibility of the ruling class toward laborers?
Workers and families are struggling with like hunger and employment and like harsh weather and state. And he also mentions that while the world haven't the resources to like help the poor workers who struggle with families, like they chose to ignore it.
Yeah, a lot of indifference. What was she doing for a living in Chicago? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
She was like suing the wealthy.
Yeah, so she's acquainted with the wealthy because that was her clientele. So that's interesting. If she's serving the wealthy, making dresses for them, that probably means she was pretty damn good at what she did. Because obviously the wealthy want the best, right? So she's probably the best. Yeah.
Didn't she also like work as a teacher?
She was a teacher. What did she? She was a teacher. So before she was in Chicago, she was in Memphis, Tennessee. What happened to her in Memphis, Tennessee? Yellow fever, but yeah, sickness happened.
And the rich were able to leave the city, but poor,
What happened to her family?
they died.
one by one in front of her. And that's happening in her entire community. And yeah, the wealthy can leave. Or they're in big enough houses where they have space and they're not all tacked in. So basically what's happened in her life, she was born, she's an immigrant, her parents bring her over from Cork, Ireland. So she has that experience. But she's buying into this American story. You work hard, be a teacher, a seamstress, you make money. So she's having a family, she's trying to etch out some sort of life. They're doing okay. But then yellow fever happens. Those are all family. Tragic, but she does what anyone of dignity does. She brushes herself off. She relocates to Chicago. She knows how to make dresses. She opens up a business. She participated in the capitalist system. And then this great fire happened. The Great Fire of Chicago of 1871. This is interesting too, because it was a huge fire, almost burnt down all of Chicago. And part of the reason why it spread is going to lead to a conversation about what should be in the private market, run by private, owned businesses versus what should be in the public market, services provided by the government. So as understand, cities are emerging. It's not like the president and the Congress got together and said, okay, it's time to build cities. This is how we're going to do it. It's organic. It's just happening. That's why it's a mess. There's no planning going on. But so yeah, fires can happen. And so if you bought property, whether for a business or a home, then you would go to a privately owned fire department and purchase fire protection. And then you would get like some sort of plaque or something like that and put it in front of your house. So if it was a fire, the fire department would come by and go, okay, yeah, they paid, put the fire out. Oh, that house is on fire, they didn't pay. They should have paid. Their house burns down. Well, you can see how this can spread a huge fire. So this sparks a conversation of, well, maybe it's not a good idea to have the fire department in a for-profit private sector. Maybe we should have taxes and dedicate those taxes to having a committed, professional, publicly paid fire department. It just burned down a whole city. That's not just a lot of people dying, but in the context of this society, what's more important than lives, that was a lot of money lost. So let's spend a little money so we can prevent something happening. But what does the fact that, to respond to this question right here, so the wealth gap she's seeing, she's acquainted with the wealthy, she sees how they live. There's this great fire which affected mainly the poor, because even though rich people are going to have their homes and businesses burned down, what do you think rich people have associated with their property that poor people might not have associated if they have property? Insurance, right? Or at least maybe even the money to rebuild, right? Or the money to relocate. Like, I'm done with Chicago, I'm going to go back to New York, where poor people are just trapped in the ash and have to figure out, well, how do I live here now? And then she saw that happen prior in her life in Memphis, where yellow fever predominantly ravaged the poor. And even when the rich were contracting yellow fever, which is a terrible disease, they could pay for medical attention, where the poor couldn't. How does all of that shape her perspective on the responsibility of the ruling class toward the laborers? what do you suppose she's beginning to recognize from her own lived experience about how the poor live versus the rich? Knowing a little bit about what you know, who she was.
Or live like not in a well-mannered, like.
Yeah.
way, and the rich live in luxury.
So that's true, and that's what she's observed. And this is before she becomes a union organizer, champion of child labor. So this is a kind of an aha moment for her.
The influence.
Like, it's not fair.
Yeah, what's not fair?
The
What's creating this situation for the poor? So what's creating the wealth gap, though? What system is creating the wealth gap? Capitalism. Capitalism. This was an eye-opening moment for her. There's a connection. There's a connection to the fact that there's poverty. I mean, you can see it right here in McAllen. They're from block to block. There's blocks where it's like, man, that's some hard living over there. And the next block, people are living opulent. There's a connection there. The wealthy need poor people to do the work and go to the factories. And they need to be in a desperate situation, so they go to work every day. You only give them enough. If you pay them well, then I'll work here for a little bit, and then I got enough money so I can move on. No, you want a dedicated class that is desperate, that will be exploited forever. So this is an eye-opening moment for her where she's going, oh, capitalism's got to go. So she's a socialist. She wants to see the workers unite and get rid of capital. Now, there's all sorts of people concerned about the way she is. Not everybody who's having that lived experience is going to come to the same conclusion. There's other people that are saying, no, capitalism is great. It's just the workers need to be able to share that wealth with higher wages, safer working conditions, 8-hour workday, the weekend. Those are all things that came from people like her and other people who viewed the virtues of capitalism different than her. We didn't all of a sudden just get the 8-hour workday, a minimum wage, OSHA that makes sure that you're not working in a unreasonably dangerous working condition. This is the beginning of that conversation in the 1870s that we just take for granted today. All right, Mother Jones argues that, quote, labor must bear the cross for other sins, referencing the burning of the railroad property in Pittsburgh. How does this experience illustrate her view on the power dynamics between industrial leaders, media, public perception, and the labor movement? Does anyone have a response to that?
Industrial leaders like hold more power so they can like change the like how events were like told because they use like the newspapers.
Mm-hmm.
And it made the labor movements like scapegoats because they were blamed for like the burning of the railroad, even though it was industrial like businessmen like hiring like what is it called? Hoodlums?
Yeah,
But-
thugs. Yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't like Mother Jones like believed like it wasn't this like the labor movements who were the ones that like caused that like fire for the railroads, so it's the business. And so the business interests they escaped like responsibility because like they portrayed it that it was the
Yeah, excellent. You're pointing out a lot of things that makes it very difficult for labor to organize. The challenges that early on in the labor movement, they are having to contend with. So let's take a look at what she says here. Scores of locomotives were housed in Pittsburgh. One night, a riot occurred. Hundreds of box cars standing on the tracks were soaked with oil and set on fire and set down the tracks to the roadhouse. The roadhouse caught fire. Over 100 locomotives belonging to the Pennsylvania Railroad Company were destroyed. It was a wild night. The flames lighted the sky, and turn the fiery flames of the steel bayonets of the soldiers. The strikers were charged with the crimes of arson and rioting, although it was common knowledge that it was not they who instigated the fire, that it was started by hoodlums, thugs, backed by the businessmen of Pittsburgh. What's going on there? So, okay, you've got workers working for the railroad, organizing a strike, and understand what a strike means to someone in business. Workers aren't going to work. That means the businessmen ain't making money. So this is a threat to them. So what's going on? Now there's this big fire. Hundreds of railroad cars have been destroyed. That's a lot of money. So what's happening here? Who's being blamed for it? The workers. Who did it, according to Mother Jones? Yeah, and why would the hoodlums do this?
Because they were paid by the.
And what? Yeah, and why would they do that?
To lock them in.
Huh?
To lock them next to people there. Like in a way.
Well, not necessarily. I mean, maybe. But what benefit are they getting? They're burning down their own railroads. No, maybe. But let's think about the motive here. Who's getting blamed? The workers. That's the motive. The strike was effective. So the purpose of a strike is let's sit down at the table because workers don't want to strike.
They want to be able to feed.
Yeah, you're not getting paid when you strike unless you're in a really organized union that collects union dues and is able to at least subsidize part of your wages. But even then, you're not getting your full wage. And it's dangerous. It's kind of humiliating. You're out there, everyone's looking at you. So nobody wants this. But instead of the businessmen going, okay, let's sit down at the table like gentlemen, they burnt down their own railroads by paying young men to burn them down, and now blame it on the workers. What benefit do you think the business community is getting out of that?
That the strikes, well, that the working class is gonna get oppressed.
How so, though? What would if everybody believes that the union, the people organized the union, actually made that fire? How is everybody going to think about the union? Yeah, these people are good for nothing. Yeah, so more people don't organize into unions because of public perception. This is all of this is trying to get people to manipulate public perception. So this sort of thing happens today. If you're ever involved in like an organized protest and involved in the organization of it, one thing that they will tell you is be on the lookout for what is referred to as provocateurs. So somebody will show up who's dressed like a protester, holding a sign. And at one point, this person who you think is on your side, you're like, hey brother, how's it going? Yeah, we're gonna take down the man. Cool. You know, you're shouting, you got your bullhorns, you got your signs, and then this person all of a sudden starts throwing rocks in the windows. And now the police have a pretense to come in and break down the entire protest. And then you look for that guy who did it, and he's gone. Well, sometimes that's actually law enforcement that does that, or somebody in the industry paid some people to do that. And it makes all the protesters look like they're just a bunch of immature people who break property and are causing trouble. Right? So she's pointing out something that is, it makes it very difficult to organize because, it doesn't take a lot of money to create. I mean, those hoodlums probably got a lot of money from them, but to the business people that orchestrated this whole thing, it was money that they could find under their couch. So that's one thing that she's faced with there. Excellent. Was there another question in this chapter? Yeah, These early years saw the beginning of the American industrial life, hand in hand with the growth of the factories and the expansion of the railroads. With the accumulation of capital and the risk of banks came anti-labor legislation, came strikes, came violence, came the belief in the hearts and minds of workers that legislatures must carry out the will of the industrialist, right? That's writ large the problem of labor. That here we're supposed to have a government that is of the people, by the people, for the people, as written in the Constitution. But the politicians who are funded by the capitalists are only looking out for the capitalists. Nothing wrong with politicians looking out for capitalists, but it is totally at the expense of the majority of the people. And so the result, low wages, really dangerous working conditions, long hours, 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours. No workman's comp. You get hurt on the job, you're screwed for life, most likely, or dead. All right, how about chapter 2? Maybe we can get one question in here. Anybody have a response to either of these questions?
So the employers in the press would deliberately use the label.
One second, Roxanne. Which question are you responding to? Okay, so let's read that so we all know where you're coming from. Mother Jones notes that Chicago seemed, quote, incapable of discussing a purely economic question without getting excited about anarchism. Ooh, interesting. How did employers and the press utilize this label to invalidate the 8-hour workday movement? And in what ways does this reflect the broader power of rhetoric in suppressing labor advocacy? So real quick, just to make sure we understand what this, so anarchy isn't that punk aesthetic, we're black, right? It's not that it's from the 70s, it's punk rock. I'm an anarchist, I'm a wild person. Anarchy is very akin to, you might hear libertarians today. Anyone know what a libertarian is? The least amount of government is the best amount of government. But it's a little bit different than that. It's the sense that, hey, we're all adults here. Maybe we don't need government if we have communities that we all kind of take care of ourselves, and decentralize things, right? Not have these giant banks and these giant railroads and these giant corporations. We need to be able to make things for ourselves. It's asking actually to go back to the pre-industrial age. And it was a big movement at this time. So with that understood, yeah, Roxanne, what's your response to the first question?
The employers and the press would deliberately use the label anarchism to discredit the 8-hour movement and to make the public turn against the workers opinion. And the workers were simply asking for better working conditions and wages. But the employers and the press they made it seem like those demands were a threat to the nation, making the labor movement look bad. And yeah, that's it.
Okay, excellent. Why are the anarchists getting blamed for whatever's going on here in Chicago? What's happened?
The 8 hour.
That's what they're fighting for. So they're out there. There's this huge strike in Chicago. And then something happens, and now the press is saying the anarchists, everybody hate them. Everybody hate these people that are fighting for the 8-hour workday.
Was it the bomb
Yeah, what happened?
that killed some police?
Yeah, policemen are getting killed. And again, what happened eventually, some of these people that are being blamed, these anarchists, some of them are getting executed. Did anyone catch what happened to one of them?
One of them committed suicide.
One committed suicide, so their lives are being destroyed. But eventually one of them gets pardoned because it gets found out, just like in the last chapter, it was a provocateur being paid by a rich person to throw a bomb that killed all the police officers. The people that were organizing the strike had nothing to do with the killing of the police. Right? This here is May 1st. This is May Day, which is really interesting because in this country, and May Day is a celebration and an honoring and a commemoration for all of this that you're reading in this autobiography or anything you're reading in the chapters about the labor movement, which doesn't just happen in the United States, it also happens in Europe. So May Day is a remembrance of what happened in the Haymarket Square when people who dedicated their lives. We just want to work 8 hours, man. That's all they're asking for. It's what's the point of working 7 days a week, 12 to 16 hours a day? Why is that? That's not a functional life. So understand, yeah, the fact that we just expect today that I got a job, cool. I'm only going to be there for 8 hours. If I work more than 8 hours, I get time and a half if they're following laws, and sometimes they don't. But that is the law, and that is our culture that comes from this. What's interesting in this country is we don't really recognize May Day. We created another holiday in September called Labor Day. That's kind of papered over, but in European countries and in some pockets of this country, May Day is that is more of the holiday. That's more of the day that we need to celebrate and it's basically a remembrance of what it takes to try to get something as reasonable of, yeah, I work for you. We have an understanding. I show up. I work really hard, but man, I have to have a life outside of work. I have to be with my family because that's the point of me going to work, right? Did you have more response? It looks like you have a lot of responses, Roxanne. Did you have quite a few? Why don't you turn those into me with your name on them? I'll take a look at them, and I can make sure you get some sort of a. Does anybody else have responses? Okay, so I like to do this from time to time. I don't mind doing the lecture. That's what I get paid for, but it's a little bit more interesting if everybody just does a little bit. We can have a real fruitful conversation and really kind of dig into this stuff and really understand what's going on. Okay, a couple of things before I let you go. I just want to show this to you. This is for my next class. So this is if you want to earn a B or an A, you have to do a textual analysis in the folders from the deeper dive. So you open up the folders for the deeper dive, which is the folder for a B for the bundle. You're going to see a link for a textual analysis. So I had a student do this. So I wanted to show you. So she got one out of the way. So for an A, you got to do 2. And for a B, you have to do 1. Right? So this student, very wise, got it out of the way. She did very well. So when she comes to class, I'll give this to her. But I want to make sure you guys have that on your radar. If your intent is to earn a B or an A, if your intent is to earn a C, then don't worry about it. You don't have to do this. Again, always reference the little table in the syllabus that's up on the billboard. Exactly what you have to do for every grade here. And other thing too, I know some of you are working on the group project, so that's another thing you need to do for either a B or an A in this course. 1 for a B and 2 for an A. So keep that in mind. And look on Pronto. I'll let you know what we'll be discussing on Monday. But in the meantime, keep working on the Prontos. And Roxanne, if you want to turn in what you have, I'll look through it and make sure that your hard labor wasn't for naught.